Pun was thoroughly intended. 68% of the country is in favor of legalizing weed, so it appears now more than ever that using pot is getting a pass. But there are many who say, whoa, 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 not so fast. They insist marijuana is dangerous and should not be legal and are fighting to keep the green stuff out of communities and particularly out of the hands of America's youth.
I'm a huge fan of smoking pot. I smoke it, I eat it. Sometimes, I rub it on my body.
There's a pretty good chance you already know there's a new push to legalize marijuana nationwide.
I think it needs to be legalized in all 50 states.
I'm definitely a big advocate for marijuana.
Tonight, Texas's top agriculture official says it's time to lead or get out of the way when it comes to effective cannabis policy.
A state Senate hearing this morning could be the kickoff to legalizing marijuana use for adults in Pennsylvania.
It is already being used by millions of people, young and old, far and wide.
House lawmakers voted today to end the federal ban on marijuana. It split almost entirely along party lines.
This is an important, fair piece of legislation.
This is a piece of garbage. I oppose legislation.
This ain't your mother's marijuana. Science tells us that young people who regularly use marijuana are more likely to show a decline in IQ and school performance.
Colorado Springs voters will get the chance to vote on legalizing the sale of recreational marijuana in this city.
I'm vehemently opposed to Colorado Springs adopting recreational marijuana.
Mayor John Suthers says legalizing recreational marijuana sales does not align with the city's values.
You're going to spend more money trying to regulate it, dealing with the police issues, all sorts of cleanup issues and things like that than you'll ever raise.
Okay, now I've got a lot of experts here today on both sides of this issue, and we're going to talk to them in a minute, but I'm just curious, audience-wise, how many of you believe that marijuana, generally speaking, is safe? Raise your hand. Safe to use. Okay, that's maybe a third of you. How many of you think it should be legalized? Raise your hand. Okay, how many of you think it should not be legalized? How many of you think you can stop its use by prohibiting it? Raise your hand. Like 2 people. What do you think?
When I voted to legalize it, I thought we were voting for the old-fashioned weed, like 3%, 5% THC. I didn't know that they were going to be making these concentrates, these products that are 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 20 times stronger than what I thought we were voting for. And they're also making candies, and they're making cookies that children want. And people don't know about the risks. And so when we talk about regulating it, the industry fights regulation. And so I didn't know that. I thought that they were going to want to regulate it, that they would want to tell people about what the harms are, and they really don't seem to want to.
Yeah, well, agricultural science is advanced too. So just the plants themselves are
more psychoactive.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So there's a big spread between stopping it and having it ubiquitous in our society. We're never going to stop it. The war on speeding has been a failure because people speed. But do we just eliminate the speeding laws because, hey, everybody's going to go 5, 10, 15 miles over the speed limit? We send a really bad message when we put green crosses on stores and when we say marijuana's medicine, it's not harmful. We're messaging really improperly on this for our kids and really society at large.
Mm-hmm. But you have to be 21 recreationally in most states. So 12-year-olds can't walk in and buy it, at least. What's that?
It's a joke.
It's not a joke. You can't walk into a dispensary at 12 years old and buy marijuana. That's
the average age of introduction to marijuana is 12.
Not
Why?
in a dispensary.
No, but we have.
Well, I mean, let's stick with the facts. The facts are bad enough if you're against it.
Yeah.
Without making them worse. What do you want to say?
Just like any other pharmaceuticals, corn syrup or sugar, anyone can get access to that. It's all about research and education to be able to teach the proper ways to do it. Do you hide your sugar in your house? Do you hide your alcohol? Do you hide your pharmaceuticals or your painkillers? The whole point is if you're going to treat key, you also have to evaluate every other substance. And where alcohol does not have medicinal value, cannabis does.
Okay, let me take a break here, and then we're going to come back and continue the conversation. Is marijuana addiction a real concern? Or is it no different than being hooked on coffee or sugar? We'll talk about that after the break, and we're going to get into what the dangers really are here. We're going to find out what the research shows, not what the politicians say, not what the users say, not what the parents who don't like it say. Whether you like it or not, we're going to look at the science. Some of you may like it, some of you may not, but we're going to look at the science. We'll be right back. You believe that pro-legalizers are lying to the American people. What are they lying about?
There's an industry that's laughing all the way to the bank.
And later,
Johnny was not a criminal. He was a victim. He is a victim of a predatory addiction for profit industry that he should not have been able to access. And I am 100% sure he would be with me here today if it weren't for legalization.
Monday.
Sextortion scams are on the rise.
It's called sextortion.
He said, if you do not do what I say, I will ruin your life.
The guys didn't stop with just taking nudes of the kids.
They wanted me to cut my legs on camera.
They were like, get on webcam with me right now, or I'm going to send this to literally everybody you know.
You think your child might not be a victim? They can be right now. That's Monday. Then, on Wednesday, the debate between pro-life
Abortion is violence against a child.
and pro-choice.
Everyone has a right to choose.
When
People
does
have a
the
right
baby
to.
have a choice to live?
West Hollywood is going green, as in allowing the cannabis industry to expand and transform entertainment in that city.
Officials are thinking Amsterdam, pot cafes, lounges, and even galleries.
Then that's going to get into more of our chocolate-based products.
Kelly Lyon of the Artistry Marijuana Dispensary showing off their wide range of pot-based products. The store is part of an ever-evolving and booming industry.
I really see it as a place that can sort of redefine what the image of cannabis is to the general public.
Well, joining us is Dr. Kevin Sabet. He is the president and CEO of Smart Approaches to Marijuana, a nonprofit organization that advocates against the legalization of marijuana. Also here is Karen O'Keefe, who is the director of state policies for the Marijuana Policy Project, which has successfully helped lobby efforts in state marijuana legalization and decriminalization campaigns. So, you two are on opposite sides of this. Let me start with you, Dr. Sabet. You believe that pro-legalizers are lying to the American people. What are they lying about?
Well, listen, this is Big Tobacco 2.0, right? We're bringing the bad old days of tobacco from the 1930s, where we have an industry whose business it is to get people addicted. It's all about money. So when you talk about 68% of Americans, for example, agreeing with legalization, many of those people agree with decriminalization, which is different. I don't want people going to prison for pot. I don't think you should be locked up. I'm not saying you're a bad person, but that is very different than what we have now, which is mass commercialization and an industry making money off of saying this is harmless. And it's what Big Tobacco did for 100 years until we sort of woke up as a country and saw, wait a minute, we've been lied to and we have the death count. We're now beginning to see that with marijuana. So you shouldn't go to prison, but we don't need to have billboards of, pot gummy bears and all these kid-friendly products that, drug dealers didn't come up with. So, there's an industry that's laughing all the way to the bank, and they're laughing based on the ignorance that we're being told from this industry.
What do you say to all that?
Marijuana is far safer than alcohol. And like alcohol prohibition before it, marijuana prohibition has been a disastrous failure. The reason Americans think that marijuana should be legal is because they've seen that the lies that they're told about it aren't true. Well, we have 82,000 people in America dying every year from the chronic impacts of the health impacts of alcohol. Marijuana isn't even shown to increase mortality. 2,000 people every single year are dying from alcohol poisoning. Cannabis has not been shown to cause a fatal overdose. I've sat in hearing room after hearing room with people that are volunteering their time, former law enforcement, former doctors, people that care about racial and social justice, and to portray them as if they're working for some shill of a company is just offensive, and it's offensive to me.
All of them, but unfortunately, the members of your board of directors are of the organization. I don't think you, but your board. They're profiting off of marijuana being legalized. They are CEOs of companies who make money the more that you sell. So the reason why every president, from Barack Obama, who I worked for, to George Bush, to to even Joe Biden, opposes legalization, as well as every single major medical association in this country that opposes it, is because they see that we don't need another legal drug. Alcohol, the train has left the station. 80% of people drank during Prohibition. That's why you couldn't prohibit it. We're still way below that for marijuana, so I think we're comparing apples and oranges there. But there's a reason why every medical group and, frankly, a lot of leaders from both parties, they don't want to see this legal.
Well, let me ask you a question. Anytime somebody is selling me something, I just kind of like to know what their agenda is, what their stake in the game is. And you do have a stake in the game. You get paid to sell marijuana legalization, right?
So I graduated in the top 10% of my class at law school. I could have been making much more if I'd gone into private practice. If my goal were to make money instead of devoting my life to an issue that I care about and to making the world a better place, this is not the career path I would have taken. So
you want to legalize marijuana to make the world a better place?
Yes, I honestly believe that young people should not use marijuana. So we support legalization for adults 21 and older and people with serious illnesses with their doctor's recommendation. So if I was talking to a young person, I would tell them, don't use cannabis at all, and especially don't use highly potent products and don't use it regularly.
Why not?
Because you have more of a risk of cannabis use disorder and other negative effects if you use cannabis as a young person. And there is a risk of dependence too. There are risks, and there are more the younger you are. I don't want my nieces and nephews, I don't want young people using marijuana unless they're seriously ill and it's to treat their medical condition. Now for adults, my own husband, I prefer him to use marijuana to over-the-counter medicines. I was terrified because he has chronic pain and he was using so much ibuprofen. And then he also went and had surgery for a kidney tumor, which may or may not have been caused by it, hopefully not. And they gave him opioids. And he didn't have to take the opioids because of cannabis. So the person who I care most about in this entire world, I feel like marijuana is a better choice for him. And the fact that he could use it as over-the-counter is a relief to me.
Some say legalization has absolutely put more potent pot in the hands of teens, while others say legalization is about protecting our youth. We'll talk about that when we come back.
There's so much that can be done under regulation. We're just early into this. But I can guarantee you one thing. Under Prohibition, our kids are at serious risk.
Well, happening today at the Utah Capitol, dozens of healthcare professionals and advocates gathering to highlight the dangers of marijuana misuse, specifically for teens and children.
Because there's long-term consequences to marijuana use in children, and we want to avoid all recreational use in kids where we can.
Now, it's all part of a new statewide campaign called Gray Matters. The program works to educate parents and children on the impacts marijuana can have on a developing brain.
This is Dr. Ronit Lev. She's an ER physician at Scripps Mercy Hospital in San Diego. And she says Americans are being misled about how dangerous marijuana and particularly the high THC products really are. And you've dealt with a lot of children that have gotten a hold of these products accidentally and show up in the ER.
Yeah, Dr. Phil, the #1 poisoning in children in the United States in babies under the age of 5 is THC. We treated a child who got into his mom's gummy bears, one gummy bear. He ended up in a coma with his eyes rotating on his head, and there's no antidote. He just had to be in the hospital and wait for it to detoxify. And I just wanted to correct a couple points, Karen, that you made. One point that you made is it's safer than alcohol, and I just wanted to differ on that. No one died from one smoke of tobacco, and that's kind of the analogy you're making with marijuana. But if you look at completed teen suicides, you have way more deaths with THC, the active component of marijuana, than you do from alcohol. So that's one example where it's not safer. Alcohol use doesn't cause psychosis, where it's a really high risk with THC. You don't have agitated delirium and a whole slew of other complaints with alcohol. So I think, that just saying, oh, it's safer than alcohol, we have to look at every product for its specific risks.
I was just looking at the CDC data to see how many deaths there were due to alcohol, and it said there were 990 deaths due to alcohol-induced psychosis. So I just wanted to correct that there are indeed, according to the CDC, hundreds of deaths from alcohol-induced psychosis that are part of the 82,000 a year from alcohol.
And they happen not to be measuring the ones with their cannabis-induced psychosis. There's not even an ICD-10 code yet for cannabis-induced psychosis. So I believe that the data that you're saying, I haven't checked it for myself, but I know that we're just not capturing as a country all the harms in data related to cannabis.
Now, Major Neil Franklin, a 34-year-old law enforcement veteran of the Maryland State Police and Baltimore Police Departments, insists legalization is protecting our children. It's not necessarily being pro-marijuana, it's legalization brings some regulation that you think is important.
Absolutely. So when I say legalization, hear the word regulation, because you can't regulate anything that is prohibited. You just turn all control over to the cartels, organized crime, gangs and crews that bring gun violence and other violence into our communities. And the number one way of getting their products out, marijuana, is to hire children. Children are easy to control. You don't have to pay them as much as you pay adults. And they're not penalized as much when they get caught. And so they're back out, in and out of the system. Not only that, Dr. Phil, under Prohibition, and it was earlier we were talking about the increase in potency. That potency of what has been grown and what continues to be grown, you can't regulate when it's prohibited. That accelerated potency occurred under Prohibition policies. You only have a chance to tailor that under regulation. You have absolutely no chance of doing it when it's prohibited because it's controlled by organized crime at various levels. But my main concern is protecting these kids from being involved in selling. And who do they sell to? They sell to their peers in our school. There's so much that can be done under regulation. We're just early into this. But I can guarantee you one thing. Under Prohibition, our kids are at serious risk, and this is about risk management.
Can I respond to that?
Yeah, not yet. I have to take a break, and then you can. We're going to talk to a mom who blames this high-potency legal marijuana for the death of her son. She says those in favor of legalization need to hear her story. That's after the break.
When Johnny first told me he was using marijuana, my thinking was kind of like, well, I used marijuana when I was a kid, it's just weed. Parents don't understand that it is not the same thing that we grew up with.
Colorado mother is on a mission to educate the public about the detrimental impacts of THC on brain health in teenagers.
Yeah, her son took his own life after regularly using high-potency cannabis products, which he'd purchased legally with a med card.
The conversation Laura Stack had with her son Johnny 2 years ago still lingers painfully in her memory.
He said, I just want you to know that you were right. He said, you told me that marijuana would hurt my brain, and it has ruined my mind and my life.
3 days later, sheriff's deputies woke her and her husband in the middle of the night to report that Johnny was dead.
I jumped off the top of the RTD building on Lincoln Station, thinking the mob was after him.
Well, it was nearly 3 years ago when Laura Stack's 19-year-old son Johnny died by jumping from a 6-story building. And Laura says legalization allowed Johnny to easily access high-potency marijuana concentrate that she says led to psychosis and ultimately his death. And Laura, first, I'm so sorry for your loss. First, take me through the moment that you got that phone call.
It's hard to relive that, something you try to put out of your mind. It was early in the morning. The phone rang, and I suspected it would be Johnny, and looked down instead and saw Douglas County Police Department, and woke up my husband and said, the police are at the door. And I asked them, do you have Johnny with you? And they said, no, ma'am, I'm sorry, I do not. And a cold chill went through my veins, and I went down, and there was a police officer and a woman in black standing there. We let them in, instinctively sat down, asked what happened. He said, ma'am, I'm with the coroner's office, and I'm so sorry to tell you that your son is deceased. So I heard myself screaming, falling into my husband's arms, and that was honestly the last thing that I suspected. I thought maybe he was in jail or had gotten into a car accident or something else. I did not expect that he was gone.
When you found out how he died, did you immediately connect that back to the conversation where he said you were right?
It wasn't until after his death, when I started writing and researching and forming our nonprofit, that I really understood the potency and how what he had used had ruined his mind. And he knew it had, but I didn't know about how brain development changes. Even though you can't die from an overdose because there aren't cannabinoid 1 receptors in your brainstem, you can absolutely overdose on it and have acute intoxication, a 5-fold increase in psychosis, a 7-fold increase in suicidality. According to the National Institutes on Drug Abuse, cannabis use does cause suicidal thinking, suicide attempts, and sadly, suicide in my son.
And when he died, he did not have THC in his blood, correct?
No, in fact, when you use THC enough and have enough psychotic episodes, you must be sober. Many young people are misdiagnosed with things such as bipolar and schizophrenia, when actually it's a cannabis-induced psychosis. And many doctors yet, and we can talk with Dr. Lav, are not yet trained to recognize it. My son was diagnosed with THC abuse severe. We have no mental illness in our family. We have no history of psychosis. He also did not have any medical conditions that would have warranted this. These children are not hired. They legally walk into the pot shop doc. They pay a few $100s. They complain of a migraine or a backache. They are given a recommendation that they can walk into a dispensary legally, as he did at 18, and purchase anything that they want. They have very little smell. They're very easy to disguise. They go to the school. They don't have to be hired. There are 3,500 as of December of 2021, 18 to 20-year-olds in Colorado with medical marijuana cards, only 132 17-year-olds. So all of a sudden, on their 17th year, 364-day birthday, they develop a chronic and debilitating condition? Of course not. The whole thing is a farce.
Okay, and now he was using high concentrate products. One was called Crumble, which reportedly can have up to 90% THC potency. Crystalline, cannabis isolate with reportedly over 99% cannabinoids, high degree of purity. Shatter reportedly can have up to 80 to 90% THC. Wax reportedly can have THC potency between 60 and 80%. So he was using some high concentrate.
This is how the kids use drugs. I don't know if you have been, to a high school recently. I speak to high schools all the time, and in 5 minutes, they know who the 18-year-olds are in that school who have the medical marijuana cards. 1 in 10 of our middle schoolers in Colorado is addicted. They don't need to buy black market weed because they can get it from their peers. Johnny was not a criminal. He was a victim. He is a victim of a predatory addiction for profit industry that he should not have been able to access. And I am 100% sure if we didn't live in Colorado where he could get this bogus card, he would be with me here today if it weren't for legalization.
So just how easy is it to legally locate and buy the highest concentrate THC products? We're going to discuss it after the break.
A new study suggests smoking strong marijuana every day could increase the risk of developing psychosis by nearly 5 times. The research was done by King's College London, among others, and it adds to previous studies that found links between marijuana and mental health issues.
Psychotic disorders in which people have trouble determining what is real and what is not are typically triggered by factors including genetics and the environment.
Monday.
Sextortion scams are on the rise.
It's called sextortion.
He said, if you do not do what I say, I will ruin your life.
The guys didn't stop with just taking nudes of the kids.
They wanted me to cut my legs on camera. They were like, get on webcam with me right now, or I'm going to send this to literally everybody you know.
You think your child might not be a victim? They can be right now. That's Monday. Then on Wednesday, the debate between pro-life
Abortion is violence against a child.
and pro-choice.
Everyone has a right to choose.
When
People
does
have a
the
right
baby
to-
have a choice to live?
That's
The question is, do we want to make marijuana more acceptable, easier to get a hold of, more commercialized, or do we want to make it less? That I think is the key policy question.
I got to speak to that.
Go ahead.
Just real quick, regarding the gateway theory.
Yeah.
There's one thing for sure, it's a gateway into our criminal justice system. Second, under Prohibition, when people are buying marijuana, they buy it from people who are selling other drugs. And this is what we've seen in policing. So you go out and you buy your marijuana, and what I do is someone selling you your marijuana, I upsell you. I don't even have to sell you heroin or coke. I can give it to you. Meth or anything else, PCP, I'll give it to you for you to sample after you buy the marijuana from me, because I want you to get addicted to these stronger drugs to come back to me now as a cocaine user, a crack user, or a heroin user. That's the illicit market, and that's just one of the many examples, one of the many problems that we have with an illicit market, and the potency, upselling, again, children being involved, the gun violence, and I'll keep coming back to that gun violence that any police chief in this country will speak to you about regarding the gun violence and the illicit drug trade, and that gun violence is the foundation of most of the violence that we have.
That's the point I wanted to respond to earlier about if I can just point that underground market brief, is that, first of all, under legalization, we don't get rid of drug dealers. People are still selling marijuana because if you have an age limit of 18, that means someone needs to sell to those under 18. So that's why, whether it's the New York Times or LA Times or any sort of these big media companies that have looked at the underground markets and researchers, that illicit market has grown after legalization. Because the demand has skyrocketed. If a 16-year-old cannot legally go to a pot shop until they're 18, where are they going to go? And so that's why there's even more of an incentive when you increase the normalization to have that underground market. And it's why, Neil, you're in the deep minority of law enforcement. The 99% of law enforcement, the chiefs groups, the sheriffs groups agree with me. Hold on, and they say that legalization is not good for violence.
Is this the brief version?
I'm a PhD. You know how we are. You know how PhDs are.
Bree and Shar have both worked at marijuana dispensaries as bud tenders. They say they've helped people of all legal ages and all walks of life to make informed decisions about their marijuana use. So what exactly is a bud tender? Shar, explain that.
We are the essential, basically like salespeople in the store that are in charge of getting to know what people want to consume and what they want to purchase. Basically the ones advising them on what they're going to feel and what they're taking into their body.
You don't regulate it at all. It's just you try to get them the experience they want, match it to the product.
There are some regulations, like we have compliance laws to follow as bud tenders and as like people that work in the dispensaries. First and foremost, we have ID scanners in case like there's an underage teenager trying to purchase cannabis with a fake ID, we immediately catch them. I have kicked out multiple teenagers that have tried to do that. All the doses are regulated. You cannot buy an edible that is more than 100 milligrams. It's typically either not even in a single dose, it's always in 10 doses or 20 doses. So it's between 5 to 10 milligrams, which are all pretty low. In terms of potencies as well, there are control. When you are purchasing outdoor or greenhouse flower, they tend to test a lot lower in THC percentage, and they tend to have higher CBD percentages as well. And there are those that want to use it recreationally with like super high levels of THC, and they choose to do those because those are where their tolerances are.
Bree, go ahead.
I started as a bud tender. I also worked for the first cafe where we had different, where you could smoke and eat, different generations. And then I just graduated in May with my master's in cannabis science and therapeutics from the University of Maryland, Baltimore, the first pharmacy program. So I've, in my small amount of time, I've had a lot of experience. And ultimately why I went and got my degree was because at 21, I was having people of all different ages, walks of life coming in. Some people just wanted to get high. Whether they just wanted to get that experience, I always asked, what are you trying to get from this experience? Well, my friend told me to get the highest percentage in the indica. And I said, well, what are you doing? Going to a concert? No, why would you want that? So many people are still shocked when it's like, why the highest percentage? That's why bud tenders are so important. And that's why our education, our conversation, always asking, have you consumed before? What is your tolerance level? What are you comfortable consuming? Do you want to smoke it? Do you want to eat it? Let me give you some advice. And if I can just finish really quickly, thank you so much. And so many of my patients, I would start with one person, then they'd bring their grandmother in, then they'd bring their friends in. I always have them waiting on the side for me because I don't care whether it's 5 minutes or 2 hours. I'm going to answer every single one of your questions. I'm going to let you know, wait, I can use this for that. I can use that for that. Absolutely ask me everything you want. And I think the biggest part is that people just are not aware of what's out there. I agree. Potency, we do not need that unless it's medically deemed so. But how do you tell someone that? You need regulation. You need education. If people don't know what they don't know, and as I end here, thank you so much, people don't know what they don't know, and that's why just with any other substance, you need someone to hold your hand, to answer your questions, and to work with it case by case by case till you get your achieved goal.
What do you want to say? We got to take a break, but go ahead.
Keith Stroop in the 70s said, first we're going to get marijuana identified as medicine, then we're going to get it normalized, then we're going to get it legalized. That's what we've seen happening over the last 40, 50 years. And the potency that was shown there is no limit to potency in California. There's no limit to potency in virtually all states.
Nowhere.
So all of this product is available. And there's supposed to be limits to how much you can buy. Nobody is tracking that.
But that's also why regulation is important.
We've had 10 years.
Cap at least? Could we meet?
Regulation has not worked.
That is exactly my point.
Can we agree on a potency cap on the show? That would be a breakthrough with the two legalization sides. No, I'm serious.
We have to take a break. Today's audience, like you at home, is highly divided over this topic. But has anyone here been persuaded to change their mind after today's discussion? I'm going to ask them after the break. We'll be right back. Okay, we're back and we're talking about whether to legalize marijuana. Mike, what do you want to say?
I don't understand. We're talking about tobacco and this is bad. We're talking about alcohol and this is bad. And we can't go back. And now we're talking about wanting to legalize marijuana. Where are you going to go to next?
Right.
Yeah, cocaine should now be legal.
Mushrooms.
Heroin should now be legal. Psychedelics. Where are you going to stop? At what point do you stop and say, I have to have responsibility for what I'm doing? I've got to have responsibility for my kids. And when they're 18, if they're making bad choices, and I need to figure out how to correct that. But I've got to take personal responsibility. I can't keep looking to a bureaucracy that isn't going to do anything. And legalizing pot, you're just... Maybe it's not a gateway drug, but it's a gateway to the next legal drug because you're going to have the same argument again.
Alcohol is legal and it's far more dangerous. So if we're going to draw the line with alcohol,
I'm not like saying my headlights are broken, so we should break my.
I'm not disputing.
I got to say this: the alcohol thing is like saying my headlights are broken, so I'm going to break my taillights just to be consistent. Who cares? The train has left the station. Let's not make the same mistake again.
Okay, Michael, what do you think? You have a relationship with this gentleman.
Yeah.
I think he's your father.
He is my father. I have a slightly different point of view, and I would never claim myself an expert, but from what I've experienced in just my life as a college student, I've seen people use opioids and I've seen people use cannabis, and I know for a fact that one has objectively worse effects because I've seen it myself. I've seen the changes that my family members who use it have had. They've gotten angry, swung out at me, yelled, screamed, cussed, hallucinated in the night. running at the wall because they're fighting battles. And I have not wanted to see that with cannabis usage. I understand there are obviously dangers, but I think that complete and utter prohibition doesn't allow us to have a respectful understanding of the drug.
Okay, but hang on, but you have seen those bad effects.
I have a son who had a perfect SAT score in math, 800 out of 800, 4.0 GPA, very intelligent. He got incredibly paranoid. He was violent. He did push me. He was verbally abusive. I have seen him trash his room and say absolutely crazy things. And when he stopped using the marijuana, that delusion went away.
We're out of time, and we're going to have to stop. Will you tell me about Johnny's Ambassadors right quick?
Absolutely. We started a nonprofit to educate parents and teens about the dangers of this high-potency marijuana, particularly on adolescent brain development, the causal mental illness, suicidality, and psychosis that can result. Johnny'sAmbassadors.org. If any parent, grandparent out there is concerned about their teens' use, please go to get help and get them to stop.
Okay, great. And I'm going to put links up for information from both sides, from all of you guys. I'm going to put them on drphil.com and on the social platforms so people can get information. If you were in favor of legalizing at the beginning of the show, raise your hand. If you've changed your mind, take it down. Okay? If you were against it at the beginning of the show, raise your hand. Okay? If you've changed your mind, take it down. Okay? All right. I think we've had a very respectful discussion here today, and I appreciate everybody contributing to it. So if you want to come and participate in this kind of conversation, the tickets are free. Just go to drphil.com, click on Be Part of the Audience for all the details, and don't forget to follow, subscribe, and follow my podcast where we talk about this kind of thing, Fill in the Blanks. Also, Robin's podcast, I've Got a Secret with Robin McGraw. She talks about a lot of these things and talks to innovators, thought leaders, and she shares all of her secrets. She doesn't keep any secrets. Thank you for being respectful in this conversation, everybody, back and forth. Stay safe. We'll see you next time.